Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with Anthony Faso, our co-host. And today we just interviewed Derek Fontenot, who's a client. And this guy has a tremendous story. And we're excited to kind of highlight that for you listeners out there, because I think a lot of you guys are going to identify with where he was 5 years ago. And I hope some of you are going to identify with where he is now, and his kind of story and trajectory and how he got there. So stick around, right? We got a great interview with Derek. Anthony, what is a takeaway or two that you had from our interview?
I think that one of the big takeaways is the importance of having where he called a side gig,
Yeah.
where he had his full time job and he's a big family man, but he also made time to generate some additional revenue. In his situation, it actually grew to where he was able to quit his 9 to 5, which not everybody's allowed to do. But I think it's an important not because maybe even if it doesn't allow you to quit your job, that allows you to create some additional income that can be used to create more income. But also, if something does happen to your W-2, having that additional income can make that transition period even easier. And in regards to his side gig or now his full gig, is that was made possible because he's doing things people aren't willing to do.
Good point.
Like he had talks about, he's finding these deals on market and being able to flip them. And typically, to do that, you need to find them off market. But the reason being is there's some obstacles of developing the land or subdividing it that people just aren't willing to do. But because Derek is, he's been able to create a business and he's being richly rewarded for doing so. Cameron, what was a takeaway or two that you had?
Yeah, great interview. I love kind of highlighting these client kind of stories.
Yeah.
This one at the end, I don't think he said this on the podcast, but he said it when we wrapped up and afterwards when we stopped recording. But he called this whole uh, last 5 years for him just life changing, right? And so I hope the takeaway that you guys have is kind of where he was 5 years ago and where he is now, and just kind of listen to kind of his trajectory. That would be my hope for you guys, is that, man, right? It all starts with the way you think. That's what Nelson says. And that's where he was, right? He was stuck in a 9 to 5 job. He started to think a little bit differently. He took action and then found some success. And so that would be the seed that I hope you guys take away from this interview. Additionally, there's also in there, he gives us a pretty honest kind of experience of infinite banking,
Yeah.
right? He gives us some pros, he gives us some cons. And so I'm excited for you guys to hear that as well.
Enjoy the episode.
Take care. If you're an investor or want to be an investor and you're looking to create passive income that exceeds your monthly expenses, then this is the podcast for you. Here on the Infinite Wealth Podcast, we combine the philosophies of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, along with Nelson Nash's infinite banking concept. Derek, hey man, we are excited to have you join us today. We've done a couple interviews with clients, and man, I think your story is going to speak to a lot of them. So welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all for having me.
Derek, you were recently able to quit your job, and the question I have for you is kind of what inspired you not to go down kind of the typical road of going out there, getting a good job, maxing out your 401k, and just coasting to your 65. What made you kind of switch gears?
Um, so I would answer that question by saying I did that. Like I went down that road, right? And I did it for about 15 years. And I mean, it had its pros, but it also had its cons, right? And then, I mean, I started seeing what was possible outside of that, and started seeing other opportunities and really just wanted more control of my life and my money, honestly.
What opportunities did you start to see? Was it did you get in community with people, or you just on your own research? What kind of caught your attention?
Just started doing like side hustles here and there. Like, I started a land management business, I think in 2018, just doing like land clearing and stuff like that. And some other odd and end businesses, but it kind of taught me like from a business standpoint, what not to do. And, a couple years later, it kind of led into buying and selling land. And that's kind of what got me to where I am now. But I would say those other businesses or side hustles in the early stages definitely taught me, I guess, probably more what not to do than what to do from a business standpoint.
Now, I'm curious, how is it not going to work every day?
I would say, the freedom's definitely nice, but then like you got to figure out what to do with your time, right? So I'm not a kind of person that I don't just do well sitting idle. So I
Mhm.
got to have stuff to do. So I have struggled with that a little bit. Here recently, it's kind of picked up, and I've been busier than I can keep up with. But I would say that's the major thing that I wasn't really prepared for when I quit was just how to fill my time.
Hmm. Awesome. Derek, let's jump back a little bit now. Let's, if you don't mind, telling us a little bit about your backstory, kind of what you were doing previously to kind of you getting into land flipping.
Yeah, so I hired in at Exxon when I was, I think, 21. So basically, straight out of college, started working at Exxon as an analyzer tech, and then over the years, kind of moved into some supervisor roles and some planner roles, coordinator type stuff. Um, and like I said, I've pretty much been out there my whole life up until now. So that's kind of all I knew. Um, in college and high school, played sports, played baseball in high school and college, and that kind of, I think that just from a competitive standpoint definitely helped in business and everything else. So I think it all kind of carries over.
Is you were working and you said you had you're going down the traditional path. You started to see some opportunities. What were some of the opportunities that you took action on?
Yeah, really just buying and selling land. I mean, kind of what I'm doing now, but I really kind of got into it really to have hunting land for me to hunt personally. I didn't really get into the business to make a lot of money. I mean, that was kind of the long term goal, but I really just wanted to have my own place to hunt because I was tired of paying for hunting leases and stuff. So that's kind of what led me into buying land, and then it kind of just morphed from there.
Well, how did you learn, or are you self-taught, or did you take a course or a mentor, or how did you learn how to do so well in land flipping?
Um, a little bit of both. I mean, I had a buddy of mine that's actually a business partner of mine to this day. He was doing it before I was, so I kind of seen a few deals that he was doing. I took a few of the courses, like the land flipping courses. Learned some stuff from a lot of them guys. I learned a lot of stuff from the Casual Fridays group, Justin Sleva and them,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and then the rest just self taught.
Nice, man. What's maybe something that you learned from Casual Fridays?
Oh man, really like the whole off marketing. I mean, the whole off market acquisition, like sending mail to get property, stuff like that. Because I was doing all on market stuff, so I really didn't even know that world existed, like that people were doing that kind of stuff. So, just how to send mail, how to target off market property, um, a lot of that type of stuff. And then a lot of stuff with subdividing as well. I was already doing some subdivides, but they definitely helped me get my subdivide game to the next level for sure.
Derek, could you mind walking us through like a recent deal, like kind of maybe how you started marketing to find the land, and then until you sold it?
Yeah, well, like I said, most of mine I buy on market. So like these are most of them are properties that are listed on market with a realtor already. So it's really just knowing the numbers and like if you're going to subdivide it, what you can cut it into, like how small a tracts can you cut it into, and then what can you sell those for, and then reverse engineering that from a number standpoint. But typically, most of my stuff we're buying, from about $100,000 up to a million, but really in the I'd say 100 to $600,000 range. And then we're
Hmm.
usually trying to, if it's a cash deal, we're usually trying to be at least like 50% cash on cash return. If it's a finance deal, I'm looking to be around 100% or more on a leverage return. So that's kind of what I look for. I look for stuff with a lot of road frontage, um, your typical stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's more about the numbers than anything else.
So you're finding these on market, meaning somebody is, or a realtor has put it up for sale, but you're buying
Right.
it through there, and then so the value that you receive is you're subdividing it, and then you can sell it for more. Like some of the parts are more than just the original purchase.
That's right. Yeah. And we started out doing a lot of recreational subdivides, meaning like hunting properties that were subdividing into, no smaller than like a 20 or 30 acre tract. And then nowadays it's kind of morphed into about half and half of that and residential development. And when I say residential development, like we're not going in and creating like half-acre lot subdivisions. These are, 2 to 5 acre estate lots, if you want to call them that, kind of nicer, larger acreage type stuff.
And what part of the country are you doing this, or multiple parts?
Yeah, mostly Mississippi and Louisiana. But I think I've done deals in 5 different states: Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, and Texas.
So let's say you find this this deal, and are you at this price level? Are banks an option, or where are you getting the money? Partners, or where are you getting the money for it to purchase a property?
Oh yeah, banks are definitely an option. I think that's a big misconception that people think that banks won't lend on land. I mean, that's how I started, and I mean, really, probably 80% of the projects I've done have had a bank involved, usually at like 85% LTV. So, if we're buying a property for say 100,000, we can generally get a loan for up to 85,000 on that property. And when you can do that, as far as a leverage return, when you're looking at cash on cash, it doesn't take a whole lot to really make, 100% ROI.
Okay. What are the terms of these bank loans?
I mean, they vary. I mean, obviously, in the earlier days when I was doing it, interest rates were a lot better. But
Mhm.
so interest rate varies, but then most of the time you can get a 30-year amortized loan on it. And
Okay.
with a subdivide, you got to make sure that they'll do like partial releases and stuff like that. Some banks don't like doing, like, in other words, if you sell your first track on a subdivide, but it's not enough to pay off a loan, they have to do a partial release. Not all banks will do that. So you got to make sure that kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't want an early payoff penalty or anything like that on a flip or a subdivide property as well. So just a few things to ask them, before you get a loan with them.
How are you marketing these properties for sale?
Oh, I use realtors for all mine, which I am a realtor as well. So I list some of my own properties, but I don't list all of them.
Now, Derek, I would think it would be unusual when we can find something on market, split it up, and then sell it for such a high profit. Is there is there something unique in regards to this area of land that you're able to do that, or it just seems unusual? Does that make sense?
Yeah, unusual from what aspect? Like from like the seller that sold it to me, you're saying?
Yeah, well,
Or
it seems to me that they could be selling it for more for that one piece, or why
yeah,
why didn't they just subdivide it themselves? I mean, if
yeah.
we're
Most people don't want to go through all that, and then obviously, you got to get a survey. That's going to be cash out of pocket they had to pay. But a lot of these properties are just mismarketed. Really, they're not marketed well. They may be grown up. They may not have trail systems in there. So you got to go in and add all that stuff. And then with hunting properties, um, deer pictures sell property better than anything from a recreational standpoint, or whatever you're hunting on the property, whether it be deer, turkeys, whatever part of the country you're in. Like if you're going to market that land for deer hunting, turkey hunting, whatever, like if you can have pictures to back it up, like that sells a property quicker than anything else. So to answer your question, most of the time it's just a poorly marketed property by a realtor that may have one. It may just have one picture, or it may have just a couple pictures standing at the road taking a picture of the ditch or something. You know, so that's I would say the majority of my deals. That's kind of the story behind them. Every now and then there will be one that just I just know I can subdivide it down to a certain acreage range and force the appreciation, but a lot of them are diamonds in the rough.
Mm. So about how many properties do you need to evaluate before you're able to purchase one that meets your buy box?
Oh Lord. Well, so I've been doing this about 5 years now, and I think I've done like 25 projects.
Hmm.
Now, some of these projects are straight flips, not many straight flips, but a couple straight flips, up to like 40 lot developments. So to answer your question, I've done 25 projects in the last 5 years, and I don't know. I mean, I know I've looked at probably thousands of, I've probably underwritten thousands of different ones that didn't work out for one reason or another.
Now, any misses, Derek? I mean, any you kind of buy it, try to subdivide it, and then maybe it did not go as planned.
Yeah, yeah. I've lost money on one deal, on one project. And when I say lost money, I sold it for more than I bought it for, price per acre wise, but the holding cost, once you added all that in, I did lose money on one deal. But I learned a lot from that deal and a lot of stuff that I can use in the future that I hope won't happen again. But I mean, the other 24 you know, I've made a lot of money on the other ones to offset that one. So it didn't, it didn't really hinder me that much.
Derek, what did you? I mean, so we've had a lot of listeners and a lot of clients that are flipping land. Yours is doing a little bit uniquely. However, if what would you say to somebody who's been listening to this podcast, or they're on that fence about getting into land flipping? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I started, it was trying to find a repeatable and sustainable business. So
Hmm.
the flip model, I mean, that's great if you can find flips. And if you do enough marketing, you probably can continue to find them. But I just didn't like the repeatability of it. And I just felt like the repeatability of subdivides for the long run to play the long game is a lot more repeatable. So I would say try to find a business model that's sustainable and repeatable and not just go after these, you know, every now and then home run flips that you find, which don't get me wrong, if you can find them and do them, continue to do them. But I wouldn't base my whole business off of that unless you're willing to put a ton of marketing behind it.
Derek, I got a question for you. You mentioned a minute ago that you've been doing this for about 5 years. Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What does that look like for you as far as kind of outside of profit, right? Like when you first got started that first year, what did that look like, and what number did you have to hit to be able to quit your job? Did you have that already
Yeah.
dialed in when you started?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So the first year I did one property, a hunting property. It was a good one though. I think I made like 120,000 on it, and obviously I'm still working at the time, so that plus my regular income kind of rolled that into the following year. So my second year in the land business, I think I did three. I think maybe around 200,000 profit in the second year, and then it wasn't till like years like 3 and 4 where it really kind of took off. But for me, I really wanted to get, at least like 2 to 3 times my income from my W-2 job, which I was making good money where I was at. So that was a pretty decent sized number, but it was also like to get a big enough runway, right? To where like if I left, I didn't want to be like, you know, I wanted 5 to 10 years runway if I didn't make another penny in savings before I left. And then obviously, you know, it's a pretty capital intensive business. So you gotta have money to make money, right? I mean, you could use other people's money. Don't get me wrong, but that's I would rather use my money. So I knew that like for me to make like say $500,000 a year, that I needed to have $500,000 at work, if not more, right? So it was kind of just working up to those goals, and then the whole time I'm building money in my 401k at work and my pension. So I was kind of working towards a point where I could basically combine both of those lump sums of money and then take that and, you know, use that as a runway to keep my business going. And then ultimately to, you know, do IBC and basically use that as my one pot of money for the rest of my life. So,
Where you mentioned IBC. Where did IBC come into the picture for you?
you know, I was thinking about that before this meeting. I guess it was in like 2020, I guess. And I don't even remember. I mean, I saw y'all's ad somewhere. I guess it was on Facebook or something. Um, and I kind of dove into it. And I'm the kind of person like I do a lot of due diligence on stuff. Usually, I don't just like, you know, take hear one thing and just run with it.
Mhm.
So I did a bunch of research, I think, before I even had like the first meeting with Anthony. I really don't remember. I guess it was probably on Facebook where I saw it initially.
Nice. When you first got introduced to infinite banking, like how did you see that pairing with your land flipping business? What was the thought there?
When I first heard of it, it was definitely a foreign concept to me. I mean, I had never heard of anybody doing that. So first of all, I had to figure out, you know, what it was even about. But once I kind of realized what it was about, you know, just thinking like looking at it from a long term view, right? I mean, I was, you know, looking at the illustrations, which obviously was on policies a lot smaller than I have right now. But I mean, if you look at, I was just looking at the long term views really, and then what I could do if I could take basically all my money in my 401ks and my pension, cash all that out, pay all the taxes and penalties, and get that into one bucket of money that I can control basically. And I mean, when I just look at what I've been able to do in the land business from an ROI standpoint, I mean, I feel like if I could get, you know, 500,000, $1 million in policies, then I could, I mean, it'd be hard to kind of mess up at that point. It's kind of what I figured.
Was that a hurdle for you when you mentioned kind of liquidating the 401ks, the pensions and those things? Was that a hurdle kind of writing that tax bill at all?
So I've only cashed about half of it out to this point, this year. But no, I mean, especially after seeing, like I said, what I can do in land, I mean, I'll happily pay that. I mean, you got to pay the taxes anyway, right? It's just a matter of
Yeah.
when you pay them. So it was really just the 10% early withdrawal penalty that, you know, you're kind of forfeiting. But I mean, you know, pay taxes on the seed instead of the harvest. I mean, and you get all that money out now. I mean, obviously, we don't know what the tax rates are going to be in 20 or 30 years because that's I would have had to work at Exxon another 20 years just to make it to 55. So I mean, you're talking about a long time, right? And then I think a lot of people just you know, having money growing and compounding over 20 or 30 years, I don't think people realize what it can do in that time period, you know?
Man, looking back kind of at infinite banking, I'm going to ask you kind of a pros and cons question. What's probably the most beneficial thing that you've seen or experienced so far? And then also, man, what are maybe some negatives that you've come across with infinite banking?
Yeah, beneficial things for sure. Like I said, control, liquidity for sure. I would say definitely the biggest negative for me anyway is the slow start.
Mm.
You know, because and I think anybody in business that's starting out could say that same thing, right? Because the last thing you want to do as a business owner starting out is lose ground, right? And essentially that's what you're doing. Not saying, I mean, if you have a long term outlook, I mean, you can definitely get past it, but for sure that was the hardest thing for me to swallow.
Derek, I think I can speak for Anthony here is that if there wasn't a slow start, our job would be really,
Yeah.
really easy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Mm, Awesome, man. What's next? What are you looking forward to? What's your next goal? What are you trying to achieve here?
Oh man. Yeah, just continuing to grow my land business and trying to stay out of shiny object syndrome, you know, trying to stay focused on what's worked up to this point and continuing to grow it. I mean, I would love to say I had all these other crazy ideas and you know, diversification and stuff like that, but I mean, honestly, I'm more focused on continuing to doing what I'm doing and growing it as big as I can grow it.
Awesome, man. I love it. I love it.
Derek, I'm sure that there's some people on this podcast that are kind of on the fence about infinite banking. They've heard about it. Maybe they've read the book. Maybe they're intimidated of Cameron's hair, but something is hindering them from taking that next step. What would you say, Derek, somebody who's on the fence of infinite banking?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just start, right? I mean, I know that sounds kind of cliche, but get your first policy going and but get it designed in a way where you minimize the loss of cash value,
Mhm.
Um, and look, I don't think infinite banking is for everybody. I will say that.
Agreed.
I know that's what y'all do and everything, but I don't think it's for everybody. But uh, I mean, I think definitely for business owners, entrepreneurs, people that want to control their money for sure. I mean, I think it has a lot of advantages.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. Awesome.
Well,
You got anything else?
Derek, anything you'd like to leave us with, or any question we would have asked, or anything that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Um, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, Derek, I really appreciate you sharing your time. I know now you don't have a job, so you got plenty of time for us. But
Yeah,
all joking aside, I think it's encouraging for people. I know there's a lot of people that were in your situation a couple years ago, where they're in the job, maybe they like it, maybe they don't, but they would like to kind of see what else is out there and be able to have that financial freedom. And hearing stories like you is very helpful. And if you're listening and you are one of those people, we'd encourage you, just like Derek had said, take the next step and start. And that should start with getting on a discovery call. You get on Cameron's or hopefully my calendar, and we could talk about your goals, see if infinite banking's for you. Because as Derek said, it's not for everybody. But the way to find out is to get on that call and see if it's for you. So,
yeah. I do have one thing to add now that I think about
yeah.
it. I will say, I mean, at least for me anyway, I would look at volume more than like rates of return. I know me and you have had some conversations about that recently.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I just think, the more money you can get compounding even at a lower rate, the better. And I know that may sound, it's kind of controversial, right? Because I mean, not everybody can afford to have put a ton of money to work, but if you can, I mean, like I said, if you just look at the numbers from a volume standpoint, you can make a lot more headway with volume over rate of return,
Derek,
higher
how,
rate of return.
can you, for Cameron, can you define volume? So just so I
Yeah,
don't have to
just
explain it to him when we end here.
just getting as much money to work as you can. I mean, right? Even if you can earn 20% rate of return on $10,000, right? But it's not going to really move the needle a whole lot. But 5% return on $1 million, and then the compounded on that, goes a
Mhm.
long way. And like I said, I understand that, like, somebody might be listening to this and say, well, yeah, like if you could do that. And so I know it's kind of a double-edged sword, but um, if you can figure out how to add the volume and take out, the rate of return. I'm not saying rate of return is not important. I'm just saying I feel like volume can get you a lot further than rate of return.
No, I think that is a very good point. So, like volume, we're talking about like the actual dollars that we're making, right? Oftentimes we get sidetracked by the rate of return, but really it's all about the bottom line, really, and how much dollars are we going to have at the end of the day. So, Derek, really glad that you dropped that words of wisdom here. And again, I still may need to explain some to Cameron, but at least I'll just send him the recording. But Derek, man, thanks again. I had to get some digs in, Cameron, even though they're all at the end, but at least they're in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Fun.
So,
right.
Derek, thanks again, my friend. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all. Yeah, have a good
Yeah.
one.
Go
Thanks,
make it
Derek.
a go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
Y'all too.
If you like this video, I know you're like this one. And if you want to learn how investors use infinite banking to increase their returns and lower their taxes, check this out. And if you have some questions and want to see if infinite banking is for you, hop on a discovery call with us. Link for that will be in the description.